What mistake should have killed you? As teenagers, we used to smoke pot in the garage in the car with it running for hours. No idea how we didn't kill everyone in the house multiple times over. Car crash at 80 kilometers per hour. I hit a car that was going through a red light perpendicular to my direction of travel, came to a dead stop after hitting the back quarter panel wheel of their car, whilst they barrel rolled 3 times into the nature strip. I hit the windscreen with my head because I'm 6'5" and wasn't wearing a seatbelt because I thought I was top shit. Both myself and the other driver walked away unscathed, which was the most surprising of all. I was taken to the hospital because of my collision with the windscreen, but was released shortly after some scans that came back okay. I don't know what saved me or the other driver that day, but I thought I died for several seconds after the impact, and airbags went off only to realize I was a bit dazed, but generally fine, which followed with moments of disbelief and joy. Christmas Eve many years ago, and I couldn't sleep, so I took 2 sleeping pills, was impatient, so I decided to take 2 more heavy-duty allergy medication on top of the sleeping pills. Being a young, naive boy, I had no idea the consequences of mixing medicine like that. That's maybe 3x the normal dosage for a 12-year-old. I felt extremely off for the following week or so. This hits home. I was flying overseas for the first time on a school trip. And I hate flying. I never sleep and I get horrible anxiety when I fly. So my mom gave me 2 sleeping pills before the trip and said to me like 5 times, 1 for the trip there and 1 for the trip back. Me, a 15-year-old idiot, completely forgot and took both shortly into the flight. Now let's be real, it wasn't a deadly mistake, and I was probably going to be okay, but about 15 minutes go by, the drugs start to creep in, and I begin to panic thinking that I possibly overdosed. I tried to keep myself awake, but it took over fast. I flat out collapsed. I was like a 15-year-old version DiCaprio in that airplane scene in Wolf of Wall Street. Slurring my words. Trying to stay away but failing. My friends sitting with me thought I was losing it. I shortly passed the fuck out and woke up sometime after food was being cleared away. I begged the stewardess to bring me food because I legit thought I was dying. In the end I was of course totally fine, but man did I make a damn fool out of myself. Doing heroin alone in my room without letting anybody know. I consider that to almost be a surefire way to accidentally kill yourself due to Vancouver's opioid crisis. I remember waking up with my back on my bed and a needle still in my arm. I was out for half an hour. I woke up feeling terrified and knew that this wasn't a life I wanted anymore. Now I'm a week sober. Might not sound like a lot, but quitting from $100 a day heroin habit to cold turkey meant I was not a happy camper during my detox, but I stuck it out, and I am proud of myself. Congrats. 1 week is 7 days not dead. Hang in there. Fucking respect. I'm proud of you too. Now don't let me down. Will you PM me at the 1-month mark? Hell to I will, thanks for the support. Dove into a pool and broke my neck at the C2 level, hangman fracture it's called. I was so drunk I thought I just pulled a muscle or something, so I kept partying. There's pictures of me with a bag of frozen peas on my neck grilling, taking a shot from an ice luge, etc. all while my fucking neck was broken. Once the disc popped out because I was playing chicken with someone on my shoulders in the same pool hours later, that's when I realized that maybe something was wrong. 1 emergency spinal fusion surgery, 5 days in the hospital, 3 months bedridden, medical discharge from the army, rip that career, and I'm good as new. I totally should be dead or paralyzed. Edit. I also have a pretty gnarly X-ray showing the plate and screws. Here's the link. X-ray C2C3 fusion. Drove an hour from town to dance naked for an old man that I had never met before. After giving me the 500 he promised, he began to ask for more until I panicked and ran. He lived in the woods and I had no cell service. I cold died over a couple hundreds. I had a very bad rebellious phase. At one point, I ran away from home for a week and hitchhiked my way across my country along with one of my friends. For context, we were both 15 to 16 at the time. One of the cars that gave us a ride happened to be 2 suspicious-looking, foreigners, older men, who spoke between themselves in a Turkish, and only one of them addressed us in our native tongue. But we were too dumb to realize the red flags. It finally occurred to us when they passed up our exit and refused to let us go when we indicated their mistake. I had to basically fake it that my father knew where I was, and that he'd be expecting me at a certain spot at a certain time, not even knowing if that would work. It did, miraculously, and they let us go in the middle of nowhere. We had to basically hitch another ride home. Boy, was I stumbled through a bush which had a 1-meter drop after it where I fell down. I landed on my back at the only place down there which didn't have an iron pole sticking out of the ground. I was driving a small car pulled in front of me and slammed their brakes. I couldn't stop in time. My truck wound up on top of their car. I was the only survivor of the vehicles involved. My dad got thrashed and tried to jump over the fence at Yankee Stadium with his friends. He failed and an iron spike punctured him. He remembers being rushed to the hospital and bleeding everywhere. Everyone thought he was going to die of blood loss. Didn't die, but he also made several more stupid mistakes, such as riding a motorcycle with a helmet and breaking several ribs, etc. etc. Honestly, he is still stupid and I'm surprised he hasn't died yet. Not wearing a helmet while on a bicycle and stupidly turning left just as a car overtook me. Somehow I only got a neat scar through my eyebrow and some torn up kneecaps from it. But the look on my mother's face when she picked me up from the hospital, that made me realize how profoundly stupid I was that day. One time when I was young and carefree, I was riding a motorcycle for maybe the second time, like 30 miles per hour, and just had some wires in my brain misfire. I was like, I wonder what would happen if I crossed my arms and held the left handlebar with my right hand, the right with my left. I'll tell you what happened. I just narrowly missed oncoming traffic and smacked right into a wall. Passed out in the woods after running from the cops. I was at a party in college and decided I was done, so I started walking home. Got like half a mile from campus when a cop pulled over to talk to me. It was like 3 a.m. and my drunk ass can't walk in a straight line on the sidewalk. My instant drunk reaction to seeing the blue lights was to bolt into the woods at full speed. Naturally, I can't see what obstacles are in my way, so at some point I had tried to either climb a fence or ran through thorn bushes. Eventually I ran head first into a tree and fell down. I had probably the most absurd thought I've ever had. If I hold my breath, the cops can't see where I am. So I did that and passed out while lying on my back in the woods. I woke up a few hours later as the sun was coming up and realized I had shredded my clothes, and my face arms looked like I had been attacked by an animal with all the scratches. The worst one being a vertical cut that went lengthwise down the interior of my forearm, starting at my wrist. This was 12 years ago, and I can still see the scar from that particular cut. The rest have healed and faded, but that one is still prominent. Had that been a little deeper, I have no doubt I would have bled out while lying on the ground in the woods if I didn't already die from alcohol poisoning. Pissing off a cliff, wasted on Jack Daniels. My girlfriend at the time pulled me back by my sweatshirt, or that would playing with the laundry chute in my childhood home when I was around 5 years old. My cousins and I took turns dropping things down the chute while someone else stood at the bottom and dodged them. For the most part it was things like washcloths, stuffed animals, a clothing item, etc. Just so happened that when I stood under the chute, my cousin dropped a 5-pound dumbbell down, and I, expecting something harmless, didn't get out of the way. That ended the game real quick. I now part my hair in a way that hides the bald spot scar on my head. Pouring gasoline on a fire straight from a full 3-gallon gas can. The fire flared up and caught the spout on fire. The only reason I'm still here is because I yanked the spout off the can and tossed it as soon as I realized what happened. Retensioning a garage door spring and the tension tool popped out. The door crashed with enough force to crack the pavement. Holy fuck. Those springs hold like 10 megatons of energy. The cops would have been scraping you off the walls with spatulas. Morbid fact: if someone dies, murder, suicide, natural death or a freak accident in your house, law enforcement and forensics don't clean up your house. Once they collect the information they need, their job is done. The owner either pays a private crime scene cleanup crew who will throw away contaminated items and sanitizes the area, or the owner will have to get a soapy bucket and clean it up themselves. Can confirm. Neighborhood lockdown because of a hostile man with a gun barricaded in his home, ended in him committing suicide. Watched a few cleanup crews parked outside their house over the next couple of weeks. Your splattered brains aren't evidence when they know exactly what happened. Taking on a plus 70 hours a week job just for the money. I hated the job, I hated my boss, and I hated myself. I could not look myself in the mirror anymore. I was this close to a heart attack, gained 60 kilograms and could hardly sleep, but every month plus 12K on the bank account made me get up again and again. My wife said either you quit or I walk, really saved my life. The condom that wasn't supposed to break. When I was in high school, me and a few friends all lied to our parents and told them we were spending the night at each other's houses. What we had really done was backpacked up a snowy Idaho mountain in the middle of winter without telling anyone where we were going. We were all fairly inexperienced in winter backpacking. The friend in charge of bringing food brought chicken he'd cooked at home, so we could eat it cold, in case we couldn't start a fire. Luckily I'd brought a can of chili and didn't partake in the chicken. I woke up the following morning to a fresh foot of snow and my friends vomiting out of the tent. We'd left our boots outside and they were completely frozen through. The shoelaces of my boot were pointing up and out and had zero bend. Me and one other friend were not sick and had to pack up the tent, the most freezing cold work I've ever done. I gave one of my sick friends my gloves because he couldn't find his. We were about 3 miles into the hike, and the trail we'd taken in was totally covered, and none of us were familiar with it enough to know it by memory. I took all but one pack and ran down trail to the car, making my best guess on which way to turn, and marking those choices with ski poles. Got to the car, started it up to get it warm, and to check if we had cell reception. We didn't. And then I ran back up trail to where they were, and we carried them back to the car. I got home and felt like total garbage. My entire body was on fire from the cold and the soreness. I felt freezing to my bones, and when I got home I started puking and was pastel white and sickly looking. My dad was pissed at me because I was hungover, and I opted for that punishment rather than the insane fury it would have caused if he knew why I was actually in my condition. Tubing behind a speedboat. Pulled myself too far forward. It submarined and popped up in the air. I was flung forward and got tangled in the torp. Feck. I was tubing in a double tube when the tow snapped. I was launched sidewise over my partner and skipped once won the water. Not injured, it was funny. But now I realize how bad it could have gone.